The Africa Food Systems Forum is upcoming here in Kigali, a special gathering to look into the food systems, the food chains, and addressing the food challenges on the African continent. Of course, this starts with the agricultural sector, and this evening we are pleasured to have in our studios His Excellency Hon.Desalegn, former Prime Minister of Ethiopia and the chair of the AGRA. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Right. The Africa Food Systems is upcoming, and as we start off this interview, I'd like to ask, what are some of the pressing challenges facing Africa's food systems today, and why is it crucial to address them urgently?
First of all, let me begin by thanking the government and people of Rwanda for hosting this premium global forum. It's not only continental, but we have more than 180 countries that are showing up for this forum. And it's not the first time for Rwanda. It's, I think, several times that has been conducted. And our home office is Rwanda, and thank you for that. I think the main challenge we are facing these days is geopolitical tension that has culminated into, supply chain disruptions, like, for example, the war we see globally. But the most daunting challenge we have is the climate change. Every one of us are passing through this process, and even in Kigali, you can see this is the hottest time, which were not used to be the case earlier. So you can imagine when the production system passes through these heat waves in southern and eastern Africa, you see that it is intolerable for natural crop production.
Right.
And so traditionally we can't move in this way, and we have to do something about it in an innovative way. And that's why the forum is a very important forum to look into these challenges we have. Besides, you can see Africa is becoming more younger and younger. There is huge population growth that is taking place, and it's very much accelerated, and you can see unrests in every part of the globe, and mainly in developing countries. You have seen that what happened in Bangladesh. You see changes that are taking place in West Africa, where a number of riots and street actions are taking place. You see what happened in Nairobi very recently, in our Eastern Africa regions, and the threats from the young people to governments in every corner of the continent. So all this shows that we have to match our production system, the entire food system, addressing the challenges of jobless growth and bring about employment to the young people. And that needs an accelerated, transformative food system in place.
Right.
So we have daunting challenge, as I mentioned, and we need to be prepared for that and address those issues.
We have a lot of challenges. You mentioned many of them: climate change, geopolitical tensions all over the African continent, and many more. But as we are trying to get Africa to food security, as we're trying to make sure that our people are food secure, no one is starving, where do we start? Do we start from addressing the political challenges that are hindering us from moving ahead? Do we start by dealing with the climate? Because it seems that we have a lot of problems that are coming at the same time that we need to address urgently, but where do we specifically start?
I think this has to be seen like a circular thing, and if you want to break the circle, you can't beat only in one place.
Right.
You have to beat in every corner, and then you'll get the susceptible part of that circular thing, and then you break. So it's not only one solution that fits everyone.
Yeah.
There are myriads of solutions that we have to think about.
Right.
Like, for example, if you have to address this issue, you have to think in a systemic way. That means in a food system, the entire food system, not only in the production, but you have to look into the processing. You have to look into the marketing. You have to look into the quality issues of that production. So I think it is an intervention that calls for every value chain has to be addressed in order to break the cycle. So it's a vicious cycle, and we have to break it and change into a virtuous cycle. That calls for hitting in every corner to break that vicious cycle.
Absolutely. And in what ways can regional collaboration strengthen Africa's efforts to transform its food systems?
I think regional cooperation is much more important these days than ever. One is we have to trade with each other. The regime, I think Africans has decided, especially our leaders currently has decided a landmark decision to have an African continental free trade agreement and area. And this is a landmark decision, has to be implemented. Expeditious implementation is very important. So if you see back the Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program, CAADP, which has been decided some 23 or 24 years ago, the implementation, when you see it, only few countries has achieved. Rwanda is one of the striking example. But that kind of sluggish performance doesn't guarantee the current challenges we are in. So we need to expedite it. We need to have both proper governance system, which is very essential. We need to utilize the potential we have, the youth, and their entrepreneurial capacity, and their digital friendship, and their innovative capacity, which can be utilized to unlock the potential we have in our continent. So I think we need to have a proper governance system. We need to have capacity to deliver, including an inclusive process, including our women and young people. In most African agriculture, women are very active participants in the production system and the marketing system, starting from the yard, house yard, where they do have high value productions. And that has to be more modernized, and their capacity has to be utilized. So it should be somehow transformed into an inclusive process than just only male dominated production system we have. So I think an inclusive process is one of the things we have to look into in order to bring this big change to happen. So I think Africa is in a very good position at this time because there are a number of best practices that can be emulated from one to the other. So I think that's what we have to do.
How do we deal with global threats against our food systems and prosperity in general for the agriculture system and production, as you were saying, some of which we do not have control over? For example, when the COVID-19 hit, we were all shocked, and it seemed that like we are hitting the wall and we have nowhere to go. But how do we get ourselves ready for such global shocks that even when they come, Africa stays stable?
I think the first thing is we have to understand our comparative advantage and also competitive edge. That's very important. Some of the things we can't control by our own, but there are areas we can control in ourselves. If we want to be food sovereign and self-sufficient, then we can control that. The first thing is we have to make our system work. We have a number of systemic bottlenecks, which is not related directly to the global threats we are facing now. It has a daunting impact, but nonetheless, we have also a way to escape some of it. At least we shouldn't be begging food to our people. We can do that because 60% of global arable cultivable land is in Africa. So we haven't utilized that properly. That doesn't mean we have to clear forests, we have to, somehow degrade our ecosystem and also lose our biodiversity, but keeping our biodiversity intact and keeping our forests still active and increasing in size and in quality, keeping our natural environment intact, we can produce by intensifying the agriculture itself.
Right.
Africa has all the minerals required, including to transit into green energy.
Right.
So, but we are not processing at home. We are just selling it raw. So from the production side, we can intensify our production, especially when we have that huge amount of youth population who are friendly, educated, and also can have precision, modern agriculture through the technology we have to use. So we have to utilize technology, digitize our system, and also our production system has to go further. So in any case, every human being eats food.
Yeah.
So that cannot change.
Yes.
Even though the technology changes.
Yeah.
So we have to utilize that capacity. It's a growing population, and Africa in size, if you see, yesterday we have been discussing about the map of Africa, and it is put in the map of the global map, a small continent.
Yeah.
But it is combined, that map which is downsized is equivalent to many countries combined.
Yeah.
So that even that map is not showing the reality in Africa, but we have to show the reality by ourselves. We have to stand by our own foot first. We have to cooperate together. We have to integrate in terms of infrastructure.
Yeah.
The good thing, for example, the Eastern Africa corridor, integration in railways, integration in roads, integration in power interconnectedness, integration in trade and tourism, and all those are very important for trading agricultural produce we produce. And some of the countries are very much endowed with ecosystem that can produce for the global community. That we can have hubs like food baskets.
Yeah.
There are many countries who can be global food baskets in Africa. So I think it is only using technology, know-how, building our capacity to deliver, and also bringing about those interconnectedness in terms of infrastructure, which is very essential. And then utilize our extractive sector properly for development. That can help us.
You said it perfectly that Africa has a competitive advantage over the rest of the world, having the most arable land, having the young population that can really drive what we want. But on the policy level, does Africa have a common goal towards achieving this? Because I always ask myself, how will this vicious cycle end of Africa growing and producing, and then its products are taken to other continents, for instance, Europe, to be processed and brought back to Africa, 20 times more expensive for Africans to buy, and we are in this cycle for years and years and years, and that it doesn't seem to be changing. Does Africa have a common goal towards addressing this matter? And to you, sir, does it look positive, and are you optimistic that we are getting there soon?
First of all, I'm very optimistic because our leaders have decided the African Continental Free Trade Area an agreement, which is the first of its kind. That is where it begins. Policy is a powerful tool. So we have that policy on hand. Every country has signed, except maybe one. So I think then how to implement that quickly is the important issue. So if there is a political will and then a political action follows, then we can achieve those goals. Now what we are lacking is political action. There is political will, but we have to expedite the implementation of African Continental Free Trade Area. And then sometimes, our infrastructure is built towards getting out of Africa rather than trading within Africa.
Exactly.
So we have to fill that gap within our continent. And I hope that is going on in many African countries very well. And if that happens, it's very important. Something which I time and again repeatedly say is let's use our youth population. That is where we can leapfrog. I think our young people are capable of taking us from the shackle of this poverty and destitute life and bring about, a prosperous livelihood for our people.
Right.
So let's stop corrupt practices and mismanagement in our system. That, whether you like it or not, our young people will not tolerate.
Yeah.
They are showing up, That's my hope. It is my hope and my aspiration to see that if there is bad governance, if there are corrupt practices, if there is mismanagement, and if there are selfish kind of, motives and ambitions by our leaders, our young people will not tolerate.
Right.
I think everybody has to align to the current political economy and its discourse.
Right.
There is hope. That's why I'm optimist.
Right.
I'm very optimist, and our young people will save us.
Okay. And finally, sir, what role do you see the private sector and civil society play in achieving the goals of food systems transformation on the African continent?
I think this is a key. We have to democratize our system on our own way, not just copy from somewhere. Democracy, it's decision by the people.
Yeah.
Whichever way the people decide, we have to accept. And we shouldn't be pushed by somebody to have a kind of democracy that the West has exercised. Of course, it's decaying by itself.
Yeah.
So we have seen that.
Yeah.
That decay is going on. But Africa has its own potential, its own culture, its own mindset, its own settings. And we have to look into our own way of people's decision. Democracy is all about people's decision.
Right.
So civil society plays a major role in this regard. They are the ones who are organized to voice what the people in that organization wants to see, like the youth organizations, the women's organizations, the associations we see, professional associations, and different kinds of, like production associations, cooperatives, and all this has to play their role into the process. So an inclusive process is the most important process that brings success in our continent.
Right.
So that's why civil society groups are very important. But be careful. Civil society is a panacea that sometimes people work for outsiders because they fund them and think that they are civil society. That's not true. They have to be funded from their own.
Yeah.
And also self-sacrifice is needed for this kind of struggle. If somebody funds you, then you are an agent for that. And you should be very careful in that.
Yeah.
We need a real civil society groups that can help to move forward the real cause of the people of Africa and the respective countries.
Right.
And that's very important. But our private sector has to be transformed. There are a number of obstacles, hurdles that hinder the private sector not to unleash its potential in Africa. So doing business in Africa is very difficult.
Right.
And we have to streamline all those processes that hinder and become an obstacle. And there are binding constraints that has to be addressed. I think Rwanda is a good example in Africa where they are very much shining in doing business processes and conducive for the private sector. So similarly, other African countries also has to emulate that and follow suit to bring about, private sector engagement. That's why I say let's start with our small and micro, companies by the young people. You can't have big companies at a time quickly, and you have to go through the process. You have to pass that process. So let's nurture our micro, small, and medium enterprises. These are the ones 80-70% are engaged in as a private sector.
Yeah.
And let them be inclusive, including young women that can be engaged in. Not necessarily young only, but even the mid-aged and old people can work on micro, small, and medium. And let's practice how to make it quality production that can be marketable, not only in Africa, but the entire globe.
Right.
So I think then we can also go for our millionaires, billionaires that can engage in the production and processing and marketing system in our case. So I think our private sector is an engine of growth for us. And we can't neglect. Any country who neglects private sector cannot move forward.
You're right.
It is the engine of growth. And we have to, first of all, believe that private sector is the engine of growth in Africa.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. And I couldn't find a better way to end this conversation. Thank you very much for your time. Unless you have any departing.
I'm okay. I'm good.
Right.
Yes. But finally, I think I have a call for all Rwandese and as well as Africans and the global community to come and attend and be part of the forum which is coming. It is organized from September the 2nd to the 6th in Rwanda, Kigali, which is our host country. And it's a home and away process, and now it has come to the home. And we thank the government and people of Rwanda for this. But I invite at this juncture for all of you who are interested in our food systems, please come and join us. And it will be a transformative forum.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.